Welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson. This episode, 2 Ways to Defy Maps. I was listening to Journeys to Baghdad by Charles Brooks, and it reminded me of an idea I had for Ars Magica. In 1220, there are no modern topographic maps. There are way maps, which look to me a little like the route maps for subways, and there are portaland charts, which are sailing angles and times. The way we think about space is not the way our characters think about space. Mythic Europe is, to an Australian, tiny, as mentioned in one of the very first episodes. I've been toying with this idea of maps since I first heard the musical Fun Home. My favourite lyric is from the single Maps, in which the narrator sings that she could draw a circle that her father lived his life inside. In a very short space, Brooks covers the Mercure and Marinita view of maps. The following extract was released into the public domain, through LibriVox, by Christine Lehman. The illustrations found on the blog that accompanies the podcast are woodcut originals from the book, which was published in 1915. Thanks to Christine.
In what pleasurable mystery would we live were it not for maps? If I chance on the name of a town I have visited, I locate it on a map. I may not actually get down the atlas and put my finger on the name, but at least I picture to myself its lines and contour and judge its miles in inches. And thereby, for a thing of ink and cardboard, I have banished from the world its immensity and mystery. But if there were no maps, what then? By other devices I would have to locate it. I would say that it came at the end of some particular day's journey, that it lies in the twilight at the conclusion of 20 miles of dusty road, that it lies 1 hour nightward of a blowout. I would make it neighbor to an appetite gratified and a thirst assuaged, a cool bath, a lazy evening with starlight and country sounds. Is not this better than a dot on a printed page? That is the town, I would say, where we had the mutton chops and where we heard the bullfrogs on the bridge. Or that town may be circumstanced in sherry pie, a comical face at the next table, a friendly dog with hair-trigger tail, or some immortal glass of beer on a bench outside a road inn. These things make that town as a flame in the darkness, a flame on a hillside to overtop my course. Many years can go grinding by without obliterating the pleasant sight of its flare. Or maybe the town is so intermingled with dismal memories that no good comes of too particularly locating it. Then Tony Lumpkin's advice on finding Mr. Hardcastle's house is enough. It's a damned long, dark, boggy, dirty, dangerous way, and let it go at that. Maps are toadies to the thoroughfares. They shower their attentions on the wide pavements, holding them up to observation, marking them in red, and babbling and prattling obsequiously about them, meanwhile snubbing with disregard all the lanes and bypaths. They are cockney and are interested in showing only the high roads between cities, and in consequence neglect all tributary loops and windings. In a word, they are against the jog-trot countryside, and conspire with the signposts against all loitering and irregularity. As for me, I do not like a straight thoroughfare. To travel such a road is like passing a holiday with a man who is going about his business. Idle as you are, vacant of purpose, alert for distraction, he must keep his eyes straight ahead, and he must attend to the business in hand. I like a road that is at heart a vagabond, which loiters in the shade and turns its head on occasion to look around the corner of a hill, which will seek out obscure villages, even though it requires a zigzag course up a hillside, which follows a river for the very love of its company and humors its windings, which trots alongside and listens to its ripple, and then crosses, sans bridge, like a schoolboy, with its toes in the water. I love a road which goes with the easy, rolling gait of a sailor ashore. It has no thought of time, and it accepts all the vagaries of your laziness. I love a road which weaves itself into eddies of eager traffic before the door of an inn, and stops a minute at the drinking trough because it has heard the thirst in your horse's whinny, and afterwards it bends its head on the hillside for a last look at the kindly spot. Ah, but the vagabond cannot remain long on the hills. Its best are its lower levels, so down it dips. The descent is easy for roads and cartwheels and vagabonds and much else, until in the evening it hears again the murmur of waters, and its journey has ended. Story writers have nearly always been the foes of maps, finding in them a kind of cramping of their mental legs. And in consequence they have struck upon certain devices for getting off the map and away from its precise and restricting bigotry. Davy fell asleep. It was Davy, you remember, who grew drowsy one winter afternoon before the fire and sailed away with the goblin in his grandfather's clock. Robinson Crusoe was driven off his bearings by stress of weather at sea. This is a popular device for eluding the known world. Whenever, in your novel, you come on a sentence like this: "On the third night it came on to blow, and that night and the 3 succeeding days and nights we ran close reefed before the tempest." Whenever you come on a sentence like that, you may know that the author feels pinched and cramped by civilization, and is going to regale you with some adventures of his uncharted imagination which are likely to be worth your attention. Then there was Sentimental Tommy. Do you remember how he came to find the enchanted street? It happened that there was a parade. An endless row of policemen walking in single file, all with the right leg in the air at the same time, then the left leg. Seeing at once that they were after him, Tommy ran until, in turning a corner, he found himself wedged between 2 legs. He was of just sufficient size to fill the aperture, but after a momentary lock he squeezed through, and they proved to be the gate into an enchanted land. In that lies the whole philosophy of going without a map. There is magic in the world then. There are surprises. You do not know what is ahead, and you cannot tell what is about to happen. You move in a proper twilight of events. After that, Tommy went looking for policemen's legs. Doubtless there were some details of the wizardry that he overlooked, as never again could he come out on the enchanted street in quite the same fashion. Alice had a different method. She fell down a rabbit hole, and thereby freed herself from some very irksome lessons, and besides met several interesting people, including a duchess. Alice may be considered the very John Cabot of the rabbit hole. Before her time it was known only to rabbits, woodchucks, and dogs on holidays, whose noses are muddy with poking. But since her time all this has changed. Now it is known as the portal of adventure. It is the escape from the plane of life into its 3rd dimension. Children have the true understanding of maps. They never yield slavishly to them. If they want a pirate's den, they put it where it is handiest, behind the couch in the sitting room, just beyond the glimmer of firelight. If they want an Indian village, where is there a better place than in the black space under the stairs, where it can be reached without great fatigue after supper? Farthest Thule may be behind the asparagus bed. The North Pole itself may be decorated by Annie on Monday afternoon with the week's wash. From whatever house you hear a child's laugh, if it be a real child, and therefore a great poet, you may know that from the garret window, even as you pass, Sinbad, adrift on the Indian Ocean, may be looking for a sail, and that the 40 thieves huddle, daggers drawn, in the coal-hole. Then it is a fine thing for a child to run away to sea. Well, really not to sea, but down the street, past gates and gates and gates, until it comes to the edge of the known and sees a collie or some such terrible thing. I myself have fine recollection of running away from a farmhouse. Maybe I did not get more than 100 paces, but I looked on some broad heavens, saw a new mystery in the night shadows, and just before I became afraid, I had a taste of a new life.